screen over about 3 feet maybe, so the table's here this morning.
Yes.
I'd like to call to order the January 18th, 2012 meeting of the Milton School Committee, and as is our custom, I invite you to rise and salute the flag with us. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First item, do we have any additions, corrections to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we will move on, and we will begin with citizen speak. Do we have a sign-up sheet?
Ms. Kessler, do you want to bring that sheet up to us?
Thank you very much. So our first person tonight is Laura Kessler. There are 3 names here. Are we all up? Laura Kessler, Renee Tabor, and Maureen Griffin. Come join us.
Good evening, everyone. Maureen, Renee, and I, and Kristen Bagley-Jones also serve as parent representatives for the Milton High School Walkathon for Sports and Clubs. We're here this evening to announce the date of the event, which is February the 11th, Saturday, from 1 to 4 at the Milton.
If you go over to the table, the mic will pick you up so people at home can actually hear you.
What, should I give her that portable mic?
Thanks. This is fine for now, and then I'll swing around to the PowerPoint presentation.
We'll find something.
I'm here to announce the date and time of this year's Milton High School Walkathon to support sports and clubs. It will be held on Saturday, February the 11th, at the Field House from 1 to 4 in the afternoon. The Walkathon is the only student-led fundraiser at Milton High School. Our student planning committee has been very busy and has provided ideas for letters to the editor, letters to community businesses, to coaches and club advisors, and most importantly, to their fellow classmates seeking their participation and support for the 2012 Walkathon. Students are seeking help from businesses by securing business sponsorships and also seeking community pledges to keep all of the sports and clubs at Milton High School. Milton businesses should have received a letter today, and students will also contact the businesses this coming Saturday in person, and again on January the 28th. Walkathon pledge forms should go home with the students on Monday, January 23rd. We hope the Milton community will be generous to the Milton High School students who knock on their door asking for their support for the Walkathon to keep the sports and clubs here at the high school. Forms will be available on the Milton High School website for the sponsorships and the pledges. The Walkathon format itself for the student involves a lot of students participating. Activities include performances by the Milton High School Marching Band, the cheerleaders, the dance team, the solo performances by students, a 3-point basketball hot shot contest, a badminton tournament, and the now famous faculty coach student dodgeball game near the end of the walkathon because most of us couldn't continue after that. It involves the entire Milton High School student body gathering together in one place for one purpose, to raise money to keep the sports and clubs that are the fabric of the Milton High School experience. To volunteer, please contact any of the parent representatives. Our emails will be up on the high school website, and mine is lkessler@ifb.org. Now, I'd like to do a short PowerPoint presentation for you on some facts about the walkathon. And this year, the theme is All In for Sports and Clubs.
Ms. Kessler, we want to give you a mic.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thanks. The funding facts are, we call it a third, and a third. The Milton School Department budget funds about a third of the costs of the sports and club programs. User fees and gate ticket receipts fund about another third. The remaining third must be raised by volunteers through fundraisers. So how do we do it? We do it by adults initially through the MHS boosters. The boosters Swing for Sports this year raised $30,000, and the boosters fill sports-related needs. The banner sales generated $70,000 last year, and the MHS Faculty Staff Talent Show generated $10,000 for sports and clubs. And the only student-led fundraiser here at Milton High School is the MHS Walkathon for sports and clubs. Over the past 3 years, the Walkathon has raised over $60,000. This is a PowerPoint presentation, by the way, which is targeted to the student body. So it states you should be proud of your past efforts, but you need to support each other even more. These are the faces of the sports and clubs programs. We've got baseball, we've got girls and boys, cross country, volleyball, the outdoor club, the jazz ensemble, the Asian Culture Club, the drama club, field hockey team, girls and boys ice hockey. Look at the size of the wrestling program at Milton High School, how it's expanded. To keep all sports and clubs operational, a $30,000 goal is needed. Those of you who accept the benefit of the school budget and adult fundraising should also accept the responsibility of participating in your student body-led fundraising effort. Here we have more. We have rugby. We have softball, girls and boys lacrosse. We have the Best Buddies program, the Spanish Club, the Step Squad, and the National Honor Society. We have the Crew Club. We have the boys and girls soccer and the ski team. This year, full participation is needed from all students at Milton High School to succeed. The other MHS fundraising sales have ended. No more cookie dough, sales of candles, candy, discount cards, on and on and on. Do you remember how many doors you knocked on and how much money you collected? This is your one big fundraiser, once and done. All athletes in sports should show your pride and represent. There are more than 500 athletes at Milton High School, and all club members should participate. There are 32 clubs at Milton High School. If sports and clubs aren't your thing, help your classmates who love them. We have the football team and the cheerleaders. And we have the student leaders, tomorrow's teachers, and one of my favorites, the Ultimate Frisbee Club. Girls and boys basketball and girls and boys tennis, and girls and boys indoor and outdoor track. And I didn't have a picture of the golf club, but they're there in spirit. In the first walkathon, 300 students walked and raised $28,000. In the second walkathon, 150 students walked and raised $8,000. In the third walkathon, 250 students walked and raised $25,000. More than 1,000 students, and I say that because there are less than 1,000 at Milton High School, but we're including the 8th graders who come to us to walk as the incoming freshman class of 2012. Ask the students, how much money can you raise? How do I get pledges? You ask your family and friends and neighbors to sponsor you. And say to people, I'm a student at Milton High School. I play basketball, and I'm also in the school play. You tell them why you're there. I'm collecting pledges for the walkathon. I need to collect these pledges to fully fund the sports and clubs programs that we love at Milton High School. And tell people how they can help you. Will you sponsor me? You complete the pledge sheet, collect the pledge money, and thank your donor. You gather all your documents, you bring them to Copeland Fieldhouse on February the 11th at 1. Your form, the money collected, your signed release, and we will have a happy volunteer there to help you through the process and get you out onto the floor. And we have a DJ and activities every 15 minutes. They are one student body with one chance every year to raise the money they need to keep all sports and clubs. The community coaches, teachers, and school staff wish our students the best of luck at Walkathon 2012 because you don't want this to be your club, team, or picture. Does anybody have any questions? So
Thank you
all
very
for your
much.
support. Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Our second sign up for citizen speak is John Galuli.
Tough act to follow there, and I don't have a PowerPoint presentation tonight. John Galuli, Cunningham parent and member of the MVAA. So it's that time of year again, so we're back. And I don't know the level of detail that the school committee gets into, but last year through the MVAA efforts, we added 1.5 art teachers, and it brought the program back to a full-time program, which meant that every kid now gets art every week of the school year. And it was a big win and a lot of momentum gained for the art program. In the recent budget meetings that we went to, we see that once again art is the first thing to go, and in the advancement budget it's nowhere to be seen, which isn't unexpected. The current program, we added the 1.5 teachers, and when we come outside of the Milton box, that still leaves us 3 to 5 teachers short of peer towns. So, you know, when we compare what we had at Milton last year and we add 1.5, we look great. When we look at every other town that we're competing with, we're still, in most cases, have about half the staffing of those towns. Belmont, for example, and I brought Belmont up last year because I think most people would view Belmont as the peer town, in that they have the same exact amount of students. Their budget is, I think, within about $500,000 in a, I don't know what the budget is, $45 million, $35 million, and they're about $400,000 actually below us. We spend about $400,000 more than them. They have the same amount of schools. They have one Title I school, they have one middle school, and they have one high school. With the added teachers that we got last year, the Milton Visual Art program has 6 teachers. And somehow, with the same amount of money and the same everything across the board, Belmont has 11 visual art teachers. As I look at this, we go over the budgets, we look at all of the things that these towns are dealing with, and they're all the same that we're dealing with. They have budget pressures that are coming from the economy. They have to fight for MCAS just like we do, and somehow they have almost twice the staff. And it's tough to assume that anything other than priorities accounts for that. I think over the last, it could be 5 years, it could be 10 years, but I think that, to me, what I've seen over the last year and a half looking at this whole issue is that this district seems to view art as painting and drawing. And I just don't see it that way, and I think that most people don't see it that way. You know, what I see is you have one opportunity every week where you go to a class, and the sole priority of that class is creative thinking. And I think we need to look at it that way, because when we look at society right now, creative thinking is the differentiator. When you look at a company like Apple, they don't have any resources or any engineers or any computer guys that Sony doesn't have. And that's a company that has gotten to dominate all consumer electronics because they brought in design, they brought in the human element, and it is art that makes the difference in that company when you compare it to any other company that it's competing against. So I think we need to broaden, and we talked about the same thing last year, we need to broaden the way we view art, and remember that this is the only opportunity where the number one thing that they're working on in that class is the ability to think creatively. You know, as I said, we're 3 to 5 teachers short, and I would just pose the question to you, and I posed it to the superintendent the other day in a meeting. But when you look at how year to year right now, in a system as a whole, but in art specifically, where we're fighting for one position at a time, trying to keep our heads above water, think about how absurd it sounds if I say to you we need 5 new art teachers. Think about how long that would take, or what would have to happen to your budget for this town in order for you to justify hiring 5 teachers. I think everybody up here would come up with a list of 1,000 things that you would do before you would get to the number 5. All right, we can't even get to the number 1 or 2. And 5 teachers is what it would take to not make us, a feeder system to the, Savannah College of Art and Design. It is what would bring us to be average with the peer towns that we look at as towns that we're competing against. I think the very fact that when I say 5 teachers sounds so unrealistic to all of us, to me demonstrates how far this program has been torn down over the last 10 years. And, it's, like I said, it's that season again, and we plan on having a bigger situation tonight, but, we're going to start working on this again, and we'll be back and bringing it up week to week. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to take advantage of citizen speak? All right, seeing none, we will move on to approval of the minutes. Accept the motion to approve the minutes of November 30th. So moved. Moved by Mr. Kahane, second by Mr. Walker. Any comments, corrections? Nope. All right, well, seeing none, all those in favor of the minutes of November 30th? That is unanimous. The minutes of December 14th.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Kahane, second by Ms. Kelly. Any, again, comments, corrections, amendments? Seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of December 14th? And again, that's unanimous. So we will move on to the superintendent's report. Superintendent Gormley.
Thank you, Chairman Pavlicek. First on our agenda tonight, I'd like to invite the Collycott Site Council to join us at the table. And in your packets, you've received a copy of the Collycott's district-wide improvement plan and their presentation for tonight. I'm going to ask Principal Janet Sheehan to make the introductions of the site council members
How about here?
once they get comfortable.
How's that?
Kathy, come sit next to me. You want to sit here? All right, thanks. How do you do it?
Thanks.
No, I can't see it.
So, welcome, Collycott Site Council. Thank you for coming out tonight after long work days and leaving your families. These presentations have been very valuable for, I can't speak for the school committee, but the response has been positive, and we appreciate your time and all your efforts. We know the number of meetings and the work that goes into serving on these committees. Principal Sheehan, would you make the introductions?
Thank you, Superintendent Gormley. I would like to thank our site council members who are here with us tonight. We have our parent representatives, Sheila Palucci and Patty Facey, and we have our teacher representatives, Zena Hamada and Kathy Kakamo. And we'd also like to thank our another parent representative, Courtney Affinato, who is our site council co-chair, and also our community representative, Margot Tansey. So I'm sure that you have seen with other presentations that we have developed our school improvement plan around the Milton Public Schools core values. So you will be seeing these sort of repeated throughout the presentation. And first, we'd just like to begin with summarizing our progress towards having all students meet proficiency in English language arts and mathematics by 2014. And I know that the committee has seen some of this data previously, but we thought we would review the Collycott data. And in order to have our AYP determination, we have to meet certain criteria in 3 out of 4 of the categories. So if we look at the categories A, B, C, and D, we met the target, as you can see according to this. In English language arts, we met the target for first participation and attendance, which would be categories A and D. And then we had to meet the criteria for either B or C. So we had to either meet the state performance target or our own improvement target. As you can see, looking at English language arts, all of our students in the aggregate, we did meet the target for our own improvement. We did not meet the target for the state performance target. However, again, as I said, as long as we make one of those, we do meet AYP. And the gain target that is set each year for the school's improvement target, we did meet in ELA in the aggregate, and that was 2.5, and we met that target. If we look at our special education subgroup in ELA, the gain target was 8.3, and you can see that we made 9.4 there, so there was considerable improvement in our special education subgroup. If we look at mathematics, again, we met the target for participation and for attendance, categories A and D, and if you look at the 2 middle categories, we did, in the aggregate, meet the state performance target. We also met our own improvement target. And then in special education, in that subgroup, we did not meet the state target, but we did, again, meet our own improvement target. And just again to point out to you, the gain target, as it is called, that we were aiming for, that we needed to aim for, was 2.5. And in fact, we did meet that, let's see, that 4.8 indicates that we went beyond the gain target. Also in special education, we wanted to be sure that we were on track towards our goal. We needed to have a target of 8.0, but it was 11.6. So again, considerable growth there in our special education subgroup. And next, again, in summary, if we look at our NCLB accountability status, what we would like to see is no status in each of these categories. And we have, in math, we're in improvement year 2, which means that we need to meet the targets again and meet AYP and all of our subgroups in the next year. So that, of course, is our goal. And then you can see by the improvement rating that we are on target in both ELA and math for meeting proficiency in those areas by 2014. And then, of course, you can see the yearly progress history on the graph at the bottom, which just repeats what we just noted in the summary. And next, as I know you've heard probably multiple times, but it's always nice to hear it again, the Collycott School received a commendation for high growth. And because our students for 2 years in a row exceeded the student growth percentile range for an average growth, we received this commendation. And you can see that from 2010 to 2011, in ELA, we went from 60 to the 60th to the 64th percentile, and in math, from the 65th to the 83rd percentile in growth. And if we looked at the average growth percentiles, it would be anywhere between 40 and 60. The 40th and 60th percentiles would be average. So we're far above average in these areas, and hence the commendation. You had to meet 3 criteria for a commendation and for high growth. And again, because of the student growth percentiles, that was one of the criteria. We also had to meet the participation and attendance indicators. And then the third criteria was to carry the same school code, which simply means that as long as we did not have a school reorganization, we have the same kind of, organization in place, and generally the same number of students and grade levels that were assessed. So next, our faculty did a data analysis in ELA and math, and these are some generalizations that we came up with after looking at the data. We did, of course, note first and foremost that all of our student group performance levels were higher than the state levels. Our grade 3 and grade 4 scores in ELA showed positive trends, but a slight change. In grade 5, we saw a significant increase in the combined advanced and proficient categories. So our students went from 76% to 86% of our students scoring in those categories. That cohort of students showed significant improvement. We had, in 4th grade, 10% of students scored in the advanced category, and in 5th grade, that same cohort had 26% scoring in the advanced category. And just a few things noted in our special education subgroup. In grade 3, we had a considerable number of students who scored in the proficient category. And there is an error there that should be a decrease in students in the needs improvement category. And we did have an increase in that warning category, which is something that we do need to note around that subgroup. Even though we did show significant growth in that area, we do have to look at the number of students in that warning category. In grade 4, in our special ed subgroup, we had a significant number of students move from the warning category to needs improvement. So in 2010, we had 31% of our students who scored in the warning category, and in 2011, 10%. And some of the generalizations that we came up with from our math data analysis. Again, all of our students scored, performed higher than the state. In grade 3, we saw considerable growth. If we looked at our advanced and proficient categories, we went from 78% to 87%. A significant increase in students scoring in the advanced category in grade 4. Overall, if we combined our advanced and proficient scores, our students, the scores went from 66% to 82% in 2011. In grade 5, and this is what we like to see, is a significant increase in students scoring at the advanced level. So that was something that we saw, and again, the teachers were very interested in looking at that cohort. And students went from scoring, there were 24% of students in that cohort scored advanced in 4th grade, and in 5th grade we had 60% of our students in the advanced level. And again, noting that special ed subgroup, there was significant change in grade 3. We went from 29% of our students in the warning category to 0% in 2011, and 100% of our students were in either needs improvement or proficient. In fact, 60% were in the proficient category in the special ed subgroup in grade 3. In grade 4, 0% to 20% of the students scored in the advanced category, and 94% to 35% was noted in needs improvement. And in grade 5, again, consistent with the aggregate, 17% of the special ed subgroup scored at the advanced level, and 8%, we moved from 14% to 8% in warning, which is, of course, what we want to see. Next, these are just topics that we see when we analyze our MCAS data, and these are just areas in which we will look at, we're looking at standards under each of these topics. So what we look for is any patterns or trends, and there really isn't anything that jumps out at us. When we note a strength or a challenge, we know that there's an area of a few questions that we consider that they made that determination. So These are just, again, topics in areas of the MCAS that we noted, that were strengths and challenges. Open response is generally something that has been a consistent challenge. And then next are math strengths and challenges that we noted. And again, these are just topics under which there are, the learning standards. And what is interesting is at one grade level, what presents as a strength, again, according to a limited number of questions in these categories, we find might be a challenge at another grade level. So at least we're not, what we're looking for is, we're not seeing any challenges that are consistent across each grade level. That's a positive. So again, as we summarize the goals in our school improvement plan, again, we take a look at our core values. And if we take a look at the first one, high academic achievement for all students, these are all of our areas of focus. And again, this is how all of the school improvement plans have been developed, again, focusing on the core values and then these areas of focus and topics. So included in the plan, we want to align curriculum to the new frameworks and implement an assessment transition plan. We have had curriculum teams working together throughout the year, aligning the curriculum with the new Common Core standards and new framework. And the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education has provided us with a transition plan so that as we prepare for the MCAS this year, we know that, for instance, our focus is still on the learning standards from our past frameworks. And then we make the transition next year to the 2011 framework. They have made a connection for us between some of the new frameworks and the previous ones, so we want those to be areas of focus, and we actually have very specific learning standards that we know will be included in this year's MCAS that should be areas of focus from that transition plan. And full implementation will be next year and the following year. Of course, we want to increase the number of students scoring at proficient and advanced levels. Another goal is to administer standardized, common math, open court, and kindergarten assessments. So this year we administered the Gates-McGinnity test, and it gave teachers a nice baseline. This is a new assessment this year. Everyone is very happy to have this assessment. It helps us with not only monitoring student progress, but also in planning instruction. Our math coordinator, Holly Concannon, has been working with our teams to develop common math assessments. We're also focusing on the assessments that are available to us through our open court program, and we've been working towards some consistency in administering multiple assessments that are available to teachers through that program. And then the kindergarten team has been working on also on common assessments and have been revising assessments over time. Another goal was to provide curriculum summaries to K-5 parents, and that has been done. And actually, most recently, a world language team has actually, led by Martine Fisher, has just provided additional curriculum summaries in French immersion and Spanish. So we're very happy to have all of these curriculum summaries. Another goal, use assessment data to differentiate and target instruction and to support student subgroups and individual needs. And of course, this is the whole purpose of using our assessment data, and this is kind of a repeated goal that you'll see under other core values. We are, one of our goals is to increase inclusion opportunities, so we'd like to maintain our co-taught model of instruction. We would also like to increase opportunities for in-class instruction for our students who are on IEPs and see more delivery of services in the classroom. And then we have a variety of programs in place for our next goal, and that's to provide before, after, and during school enrichment opportunities, and there are many of them. We have a long list. Our PTO is providing a math league for our students before school in grades 3 through 5. We are offering a before-school study island program for children who do not have access to technology in their homes. Of course, we have our Meet the Artist program in place right now. We have the ACE program, Future Problem Solvers. Our Continental Math and Word Masters are enrichment programs that we're delighted to have as part of our curriculum. We are going to be offering math clubs to support children who need support as a result of the MCAS data. Math is a Slam Dunk is up and running, and then there are additional programs offered this year through the after-school enrichment program. And moving on to excellence in the classroom. Again, the areas of focus are engaging all students, professional development, and technology. And again, repeating this, these goals of providing support according to assessment data, and creating flexible groups and targeting instruction continue to be goals. These overlap with some of those other goals that we've talked about. We're working right now, the coordinators and I are working with grade level teams to come up with some kind of a framework for supporting students and creating flexible groups on a weekly basis. So that way we can challenge students who need enrichment and also those who need interventions. We're continuing our work with our curriculum teams, and of course we want to increase our smart board technology and other technology tools, and I'm very happy to report that our PTO recently voted to support increased technology in the classrooms. They voted to use $20,000 to add smart boards to our grade 2 classrooms, and they also, additional money will also go towards the purchase of document cameras for grades 3 to 5 classrooms. So all of our classrooms will have access to some kind of new technology tools, and we're very excited about this, and of course very grateful and appreciative to our PTO. We're using some of the money from an MFE grant as well. It was designated for the outdoor classroom, and we are planning to use that towards some of our document cameras. So we're looking to bring the outdoor classroom to the indoor classroom, and we wanted to use technology in that way. And I'm sure that you've heard about our technology that we now have for our bullying reporting and so forth, so that's another goal, is to implement that program. I think at this time I should be asking my team here if they have anything to add or if I'm missing anything. I hope you're going to pipe right in.
I just want to say, and I know as Regina, that we are so excited about the smart boards coming to second grade. Very excited.
So under collaborative relationships and communications, I would like to point out that this picture is a picture of a council ring that was just installed in the fall. Our PTO, along with a group of parents who supported, let's say this was the class gift from 2 years ago. They had this idea to build a council ring. It's in the northeast corner of the school grounds, and the idea is that students meet. It's a meeting place for students so that they have a sense of harmony with nature. And also the continuous ring is supposed to signify a democracy. The teachers did, after it was installed, the teachers did get to use it before the cold weather came, so they're very excited about it, and the students certainly are as well. So I thought it would be interesting to share that. We have a goal to continue to communicate student progress and growth to parents, and so far this year our coordinators and principals provided an MCAS presentation or workshop for parents to help them understand the data, interpret the data relative to their own students. Of course, we want to continue to communicate through Edline, Alert Now, newsletters, and teacher weekly bulletins. We would like to continue to communicate about curriculum programs, and our math coordinator, Holly Concanon, is planning a study island workshop for parents so that they can support students at home. And we're looking to create opportunities for teachers to collaborate beyond the common planning time, trying to come up with some creative ways for that collaboration. And of course, we want to continue our partnerships with members of the school community, and we are delighted to have volunteers, some senior citizen volunteers in the school this year. They're in the library, they're in the cafeteria, and in the classrooms. We have some Fuller Village volunteers as well who were previously educators. So we're very happy to maintain those partnerships. And then this is just a list of some of the opportunities that parents have to participate in the day-to-day school life through our school council, PTO, diversity committee, the art docent program, and of course in the classroom as volunteers. And continuing with respect for human differences, and again, these are our areas of focus. Providing staff training in accordance with the new anti-bullying laws. Every member of the staff has been trained this year, and that is an ongoing goal. Each year, members of the school staff have to be trained on the new laws. We are in the process of implementing our new district anti-bullying curriculum. We had a bullying prevention advisory committee that developed a curriculum for us. We have already covered the topic of compassion. We held a school assembly where children in grades K to 5 all shared some of the projects they had done to promote the concepts, and it's been very successful so far. We're interested in providing professional development opportunities for increasing cultural awareness, and that is something that our diversity committee has been talking about, and they have some ideas. One of the members just provided some information about some professional development through Primary Source, which is one of the resources that the district offers teachers for professional development. The next two goals are related. Our diversity committee is looking to increase the engagement of new families in school events, and would like to, I missed planning welcome activities for new families. We began the year by having a familiarization tour for new families to come in, meet teachers in advance of school starting, and we'd like to improve upon that maybe by having a welcome packet for new families. And then our diversity committee would like to create a Buddy Families program. We'd like to hold a coffee in February and invite families, work with the PTO to come up with families who will partner up with our new families, and being mindful also of any language barriers. So we're going to seek out people who might support those new families if there are any language barriers. And we're going to continue our One Book, One School program. And here we get to appreciate differences through literature. Our committee has already selected a book for this year, and the activities around the promoting the book will culminate in an adventure night where the children and families will participate in interactive activities on the topic of differences. And then finally, under risk-taking and innovation, again, these are our topics around which we developed our goals. I think I previously mentioned that we are creating opportunities for students who do not have access to technology. So we do have, in the process, very soon we will be up and running with a before-school study island experience in the computer lab. We continue to explore professional development opportunities. Around accreditation, we are in the process, we've actually created a timeline already. We're in the process where we've been conducting planning meetings around our NAEYC accreditation for kindergarten, and we're in the process of planning meetings so that with other administrators and with the school teams, so that we can developing, creating our portfolio assessments. We'd like to continue our Reading Buddy partnerships among grade levels. And finally, plan transitional activities for grade 5 students. There are many excellent activities already in place. We would like to continue those and always be mindful of any other transitional activities that would support a smooth transition. So in addition to that, as a matter of fact, we're, our 5th graders will be going to the Pierce Middle School to see Guys and Dolls this week, so there's another transitional activity on the list. So I think I've covered everything unless maybe there's something to add.
Doesn't seem like
And I want to thank all of the members of our council. Thank you.
Any questions from the committee? Go right ahead.
Hi. First of all, I think you know that the overall achievement that you've discussed is quite impressive, so you should be pretty proud of that, and we're proud of it as well.
Thank you.
As you think about strategies for sustaining the high achievement that you've talked about, and particularly as you move towards more differentiated instruction, do you think that will require a different type of parental involvement, and if so, what might that look like?
Did you say a different type of parental involvement?
Yeah.
I think that anything that we can do to improve the homeschool partnership and have parents support children in the home, I think is going to benefit students. So, for example, with Study Island, we know that parents are very interested in understanding the program more and working with their students, or at least having their students show them what it's all about. So I think that we've seen the link between student achievement and supplementary programs like that, or enrichment programs like that. So I think that anytime we have an opportunity maybe to have parents understand the curriculum and what the expectations are, and I think a big step towards that, of course, is posting the curriculum expectations now. I think will help parents understand what that is. But I think any efforts that we can make additionally to involve parents in what the learning expectations are will be positive. I don't know if that's what you were thinking of.
Okay. Go ahead.
Hello. On the second sheet, the adequate yearly progress. Under your performance, you didn't get a whole lot of yeses in your performance under the state, but in your in-house, I think you call it, you met every one of them. So what's the difference between the state levels and your in-house levels?
So the state has created what is called a composite performance index, and it's an index that is based on it's a 100-point index, and so the state determined levels that they would like schools to achieve. However, recently, because so many schools were not meeting those targets, they came up with another formula for schools to develop goals towards still meeting the proficiency in ELA and math by 2014. So in other words, if we were to look at our baseline from last year, so let's say in English language arts, while the state performance target, what we call the CPI, that composite performance index, the state had a target of 95.1. Our baseline last year was 90. So if we were to look at that 100-point scale and subtract 90 from 100, we're 10 points from that. We divide it by the number of years it takes us to get to 2014, and that would be 2.5. So that is our own growth target. So this is a suggested target by the state. It doesn't mean it doesn't necessarily mean that is a negative, because according to our growth, some years we grow more than other years, and again, that's consistent across other school districts and schools. So according to our own, our scores, we come up with this performance target, improvement target, and so we've met that.
That's
I mean,
what I was.
if we increase by 2.5 each year to 2014, we will meet the target.
That's what I was unclear about. I think a lot of people would want to know that it's actually the state that
It is.
that
And it is unclear. And this,
takes that program to getting back on par.
the other thing that's confusing is that the state, they have this performance target of 95.1, but it's for 2 years in a row. So that makes it even more confusing. So you have 2 years to make that 95.1.
That was the first year. This year was a growth year, so that's the first year you have to get to that target.
Yeah, the way it was presented, I think a lot of people would interpret it as that you came up with it instead of the state.
Oh, I see. Okay, yes. Yes, no, I didn't make that up, but thank you. I'm glad you brought that to everyone's attention. I wouldn't want anyone to misunderstand that. Thank you very much.
Ms. Kelly?
Thank you very much for that presentation. It sounds like great things are happening at Collycott, just like all the rest of our schools. Number one, I just wanted to know, you're new to the school.
Yes.
Is your site council all new too? Is this sort of a new experience in terms of all the participants, or? Because it's a lot of work, it's a lot of sort of getting your head around what does the site council
is.
do? So I
It
guess
is.
I'd be interested to hear
Well,
how that has come.
Mrs. Caccamo has been on the council, and actually, Courtney Affinata was on the council, but
I'm new this
Patty
year.
and Sheila are new this year,
Yep.
and Zena is new this year.
Good combination.
Yeah, I mean, it is an amazing amount of data that you look at. Creating a improvement plan is an amazing task, so I commend all of you, the veterans and the newcomers. It's an important part of each school's sort of vibrancy. One thing I noticed in some of the data here is that grade 5, it seems like in ELA and math, seems to be growing
Yes.
like crazy. And I guess I wanted to know, is this this particular cohort, or is this something that you've seen sort of over the years, that grade 5 is taking some pretty dramatic jumps in terms of growth?
I don't think we have enough years yet to know if it's the cohort, because we have seen significant growth in the last 2 years. So I think that we need to see more of a trend in order to make
But
that
I guess what really jumps out to me is the grade 5 math, where it went from 24 to 60 in advance.
Yes, that's
Am I
significant.
reading that right?
Sure.
That is,
Yes.
that is remarkable.
It is.
I think that we saw at the elementary level great math scores across the whole elementary schools. If you remember, the Cunningham had double-digit growth numbers in both ELA, but the math numbers were high. If you look at the Collycott's growth percentile that got them the accommodation from the state for the second year in a row, which means that the growth has been sustained over a period of time, they had an 83-point growth point this year. Now, average is from 40 to 60, so 83 is well into excellent. And to do that 2 years in a row as a school, that's all students contribute to that growth. And my personal favorite of the scores that we see today from the Collycott is that we made all of our subgroups, which is our special education group, was all yeses in both ELA and math. So all students are moving forward. So you saw growth from students in warning to needs improvement. You saw a whole bunch of folks moving up to advanced and proficient. So we look at the data in the old school way, which is that proficient needs improvement data that we looked at traditionally. And now this new student growth model is about 2 years old for us. So we're getting high marks in both of those types of assessments by the state. And so we continue to see great things at the Collycott School. And I always want to commend the parents for sending good kids and the teachers for doing a great job in the classroom. And technology can only make it better, and more inclusion can only make it better. But the high expectations that are set by Principal Sheehan and Principal Schultz prior to Principal Sheehan, the staff have done a great job. So the numbers are just great, but the math is just jumping through the roof in the Milton Public Schools at the elementary level.
Could I just add to that, too? I do think that some of the initiatives, such as common assessments now, the consistency around assessments, teachers are using the assessments in appropriate ways. I think that has made a difference. And again, the introduction of enrichment programs like Study Island and anything else that you want to add, I think that there have been a number of initiatives.
And Mrs. Kelly, this all ties together. I told the story about Marcia Rutsky's school improvement plan, and if you shut your eyes, you could hear her talking about those initiatives all year. And to Principal Sheehan's leadership, in the budget presentation, we talk about there are 2 clubs at each elementary school. And if we're not level serviced funded, those clubs at the elementary school will be eliminated. And again, to talk to Principal Sheehan's leadership, she met with us today. And remember, the English language arts has plateaued. So Janet Sheehan said, I'd like to have these clubs for language arts. But if you look at the page, the subgroups in math, not making AYP in 2010, but then making AYP in 2011, Janet said to me, we have to keep that extra support in math because we need 2 years in a row for the subgroups to make AYP so that it's no status. So to me, it hit home. Again, it's the whole day, and time is valuable. Every single, minute of every single day is valuable. But to think, it heartened me that these 2 clubs in each school, it's just not, what do you think you want to do with this money? And we'd love it to be, you want art and you want music. But the elementary principals are targeting these important dollars. So Principal Sheehan said, I'd love, because language arts, we need that boost. And what they do in those clubs, I think Study Island actually started in a club, then was brought to the aggregate and the whole population. She said, well, I think I have to take those valuable dollars and put them in math so that we make AYP again, when in fact she wanted to use language arts. So I think that it speaks to the budget dollars, and it speaks to how this assessment and all of these tests are just raising the bar for all children. So I want to compliment you on that and giving so much thought to, again, when we went out and we talked about eliminating the elementary clubs, I looked at a lot of parents who didn't know the use of those dollars, and it made me heartened that they are really valuable dollars, and they make a difference in student achievement. The reason we're here.
I'll chime in with one. Especially this year, we've heard a lot about NEASC and accreditation at the high school because it's been our visit year, but this is a couple of times now in elementary plans, we've heard about NAEYC. Could you just say a couple words about what that accreditation is? Because we really haven't had a discussion of that at all.
Sure.
So may I interrupt? I wrote down to have a presentation, but it's a good thing that you asked Janet Sheehan, because in her previous school, she chaired that process. And so she's really, with Ada Rosemary, John, am I correct? With John Phelan, leading the rest of us in this process. So you asked the right person.
So NAEYC stands for the National Association for the Education of Young Children. And it is a body that actually assesses programs across the country in early childhood. And they have 10 program standards. And among the program standards are more than 400 criteria by which we would be assessed. And the accreditation involves classroom teachers participating in a portfolio assessment process, which is very, very comprehensive. They basically have to provide evidence that they have met every one of those 10 standards and almost all of the 400 criteria. Also included is a program portfolio that all of the administrators will be responsible for, which again is very comprehensive. It includes much about curriculum and practices in the individual schools, but also any possible school committee policy that was ever developed anywhere on earth will need to go into that program portfolio. So it's really very, very involved, very time-consuming. It's rewarding in many ways because teachers and administrators do, as a result, have to reflect about practices and really think about developmentally appropriate practices in the classrooms in the early childhood classes. And it's a very, very interesting and rewarding process.
Can I just add to that? We were very fortunate to have Janet Sheehan on staff in on this committee with Ada Rose Marin, who is our full-day kindergarten guru in Milton, and Stacia Cates, who is a Glover full-day kindergarten teacher whose former position in the district was to assess and do these assessments in her previous district. So Janet, Ada, and Stacia have created a timeline. They'll be presenting to the administration and to the full-day K staff and the teacher assistants, who are a very big part of this process. And we'll be taking the system through what I consider to be, and Janet as well, similar to the NEASC for the high school. This kindergarten assessment is a very big deal. It's a lot of work. It's worthwhile work, and it'll really boost the respect level in the work for our staff that they do each day. And it is also part of the full-day K grant that we get from the state. So we're not doing it because we just want to, and we would always just want to, but we're also doing it because it's part of the expectation that we have from the state while we enjoy the full-day K grant each year for the children from Milton. So thank you to Janet for being on the committee. It's a lot of time outside her traditional responsibilities. And thank you to Stacia Cates at Glover and Ada Rose Marin as well. So we'll be presenting later on that issue, I believe.
And John for leading that initiative. I thought an interesting aspect of this accreditation was the parental surveys.
Yes.
And
Yes,
it
this-
also gives you legitimacy to those valuable dollars in the full-day kindergarten grant. They're assuring that those valuable dollars, right down to the evaluation of what furniture you have in the room, how you've spent the full-day kindergarten grant, and when you think of it, parents and guardians have a right, they're also tuitioned in. And we rely on those funds. So it's just going to drive the system, but to Fallon's point, is very interesting about doing the high school and then doing kindergarten. You should see the principals when I say, Mrs. Kelly, should we go through the middle school accreditation? And, but you can, as a system, you can only handle one process at a time.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you,
you
Colleen.
Thank you all for your support.
for all your work. Next, I'd like to invite to the table Jerry Vitti and Ms. Russell from our PAC. And also joining us tonight is our Administrator of Pupil Personnel, Karen Clasby. Karen, want to join us at the table? Thank you for being patient.
Thank you for having us.
One of the highlights of the year when our PAC comes to report. So perhaps one more time, you'll introduce yourselves to the school committee and the viewing audience. Welcome.
I'm Jerry Vitti, and I'm the chair of the Milton Parent Advisory Council.
I'm Vanita Russell. I'm the vice chair of the PAC.
And I'm Karen Clasby. I'm your Administrator of Pupil Personnel Services. And I'm lucky to work with these people here. They're a good group.
We're also here to unveil publicly our new PAC logo, which was created by a student at the Milton High School. She took our vision and expressed it through this wonderful logo, and it's, as soon as we saw it, we said, that's it. So hopefully you will enjoy it, and this will be the face of the PAC for years to come. Just a quick background on me. I have a daughter, Francesca, who is in the co-taught fourth grade at Glover. She's been through the system from the age of 3 till she just turned 10 on Christmas Eve. So I have 2 other kids who are typical developing kids, and so this is really a labor of love for me to work with the PAC. We're going to talk a little bit about our budget concerns later on, so I do want to say that I have my own business. We employ about 75 people. I am familiar with budget issues and revenue shortfalls and expense problems and organizational issues and personnel issues and so forth. So I come at it with that perspective as well as an advocate for kids. So thanks for your patience with that introduction, and we'll just go on to the next slide. Hit the red?
No, hit the arrow forward.
The arrow forward. Okay.
Got it.
Look at that, okay. We're going to go through tonight the following bullets. The purpose of the PAC, which is, of course, the PAC is mandated by state law to work with the school committees and the school systems on issues related to special education. So we do have a formal role as well as being a council of representatives of kids, of parents of kids with special needs. We'll talk about an overview of our programming, our special education guide, progress and accomplishments. We have some budgetary commentary, and then we'll say thanks, and you can go home and enjoy the rest of your evening after you
just
finish.
want to say here that as you listen to our program, you'll see that the PAC's main goals, and you'll see more examples as we go through the slides today, but it's pretty much information to everybody, to the school system as well as to the parents of the SPED children. Teaching and learning for both parties, the advisory, and support for both, mostly for the PAC community, the parents of the PAC, the parents of the special needs children. But you'll see as we go through it that those are our main goals that make up, that we try to strive for at the PAC, as a PAC.
All right. Thanks, Benita. That's why I have her up here to fill in the good stuff. But we are, as Benita said, we're here to provide information and support to all parents and guardians of children receiving special needs and other interested parties. We advise the district on matters pertaining to education and safety of students with disabilities. And at this point, I would be remiss if I didn't say how great of a partner we have in Mary Gormley and John in supporting the PAC. They're friends, they're supporters, and we couldn't do this job without them. And I was going to say we have a new special ed director who has taken that spirit and has joined with the administration and as part of the administration to be very supportive of us. So
We're
we
thrilled to
appreciate
have
it.
her.
Go to the next. So an overview. This is great. I didn't know that I put in all. Did you do this? All this rolling.
I'm doing
stuff?
it. I'm doing it from here, actually.
That's how closely we work together. It's unbelievable. So in terms of an overview of our programs, what we do is we run really three main kind of programs. One is we have PAC meetings. So these meetings will get into an overview of the PAC meetings. We have preschool through K roundtables where we bring administration and parents together to talk about each level and what is available for services, and have an interactive discussion with the administration and teachers. And then we have a Parent Speak initiative that we just started that I'm very excited to talk about. So an overview of the PAC programs for 2011-2012. Our PAC meetings exist, they consist of information and experience sharing with fellow parents of children with special needs. Generally, we have a speaker, and it's followed by a Q&A session. So in October, we had Karen come out who did an excellent presentation. We did a meet and greet. The presentation was great. We had a lot of Q&A. I know we had to break the meeting up at sharply at 9 because it was getting over time. We could have gone all night.
On and on. Yeah.
It was really wonderful. In November, we had a basic rights training with the Federation for Children with Special Needs, so parents were able to come and hear about rights, their experiences in terms of what is going on at the state level and so forth. So very informative for parents who sometimes don't have all the information they need as they have busy lives.
And I think that that's very important. The Federation is good enough to come out and do it for us for free. And we don't always have such a great turnout, unfortunately, because I think it's very invaluable, like Jerry said. And you learn a lot, as part of the information that we try to give the parents of the pack. So I think it's invaluable, and we try to, I think we've done it every year.
We do it every year.
And I think what happens is it's so smushed into the beginning of the year that we don't get our stuff out, in time. So maybe next year we can kind of step it up a little more.
Yeah.
Now we have our logo and.
Everybody will recognize us. Well, we've really partnered with the administration on getting the word out more. In the superintendent blast, you'll see something on the PAC activities every time. We're using the distribution lists from our own distribution lists and the distribution lists from the school to get the word out about the programs, and we're using backpack notices and communication from the principals. So this is something that's new, but I think it's driving awareness of the PAC, and hopefully it's going to start to drive more participation in PAC meetings. So one of our, let me just get this. I thought you were going to do this too.
Yeah.
Anyway, we have these preschool through 12 roundtable discussions, which are meetings in collaboration with the school administration, so parents can come and learn about programs at each level. So tomorrow night we are going to do an elementary school roundtable. Mary will be there, Karen will be there. It's going to be program's going to be run by Uretsky, Mary Tipping will be there. We'll have co-taught teachers. We'll have speech therapists and occupational therapists. So families can come and get information about what's going on across the district and their particular, in this case, the elementary school setting. It's going to be a great meeting where there'll be a lot of interaction. This is one of the best attended programs we have.
Yeah, I think the roundtables, which we just started doing last year, are well attended. Much more, they're better attended than even our regular meetings. I think because people want to know what the program is. They have a chance to ask questions. There are a number of therapists. The co-taught is talked a lot about. So I think, and that's what we'll be doing this spring from all the different schools. So we're really thrilled to have the nice attendance there. So
You know what, audience, now that we have an organized list, we should put out to the incoming kindergarten parents. And so what the PAC does, they just don't plan the month before. They sat down with Karen Clasby, John Phelan, and myself, and one of the best presentations I've gone to across every discipline was the transitioning. I learned so much. One of the PAC parents, Kevin
Lenane,
does this in the Newton Public Schools. His presentation was unbelievable, so that they plan for the whole year. So if co-taught's done tomorrow night, next year the elementary presentation will take on a different aspect of the SPED program. And so there's a lot of thought put into it. But I think that tomorrow we can get the backpacks, but we also perhaps can target the incoming kindergarten parents who might be interested in what is that co-taught. Because, not to take over your presentation, but we were doing the kindergarten and first grade presentations that John Phelan is going to speak to. And I said, if you don't put co-taught up there and explain what co-taught is, then somebody's going to ask. So this might be valuable for that new group of people who haven't even stepped foot in the schools to come tomorrow night.
that's why we give it to everybody. And so that the kindergarten people can see that this is coming up, and they can, it's anyone can come. So it's not just for the parents of the elementary schools. So.
That's good. Thank you, Mary. The next type of program we put on is the Parent Speak, which is, we just did this first Parent Speak opportunity where we had parents come in without folks from the administration. It was facilitated by a PAC parent, Kevin Lenane, who's our go-to guy here. And he's an inclusion specialist in the Newton Public Schools, very knowledgeable about special education. But really it was an opportunity for parents to come together, sit around a round table and talk about their experiences. There were about 10 families who came. new families to the PAC. We had our PAC leadership there. Kevin facilitated. A lot of these families were feeling, it's very isolating sometimes to have a kid with special needs. We found that across the spectrum, these folks felt isolated. They think they were somewhat lost in the system at various levels of grade levels, and oftentimes weren't fully aware of their rights. They didn't go to the basic rights presentation, and they didn't know what was available to them or how to advocate and so forth. So we had this meeting. It was very heartwarming to see the PAC being able to provide information and leadership in this area. And I was on cloud 9 when I left, because we really were able to take 10 families who needed our help and help them on that level. It was just a terrific night, and we're going to have those. Vanita's can talk about that, but we're going to continue that tradition.
I just want to say that in the past couple years, we've run support groups. I've run them. I'm a licensed social worker by trade, and I haven't had really good attendance. Maybe 1 or 2 parents that would come, and I think I talked with Kevin. I talked with Jerry. I think the word support was really scaring people away. They felt like, well, I've kind of gotten through the shock of having a special needs kid. I did my grieving process. I got support, and now I'm okay. So I think that it didn't work well for two years, and so that's why we came up with this. And I'll tell you, we had like 10 families or 11 families, and they did exactly what I wanted them to do in my support group, which was talk about their feelings, talk about their isolation, ask questions, get support from other families. And we were shocked, and I thought, well, all right, out with the support group. We're just going to do this parent speaks. And like Jerry said, I think it's important to run them the following Thursday, right after each roundtable meeting, so that if people, because you get a lot of information thrown at you at these roundtables, I think it takes time to digest it, and then they have questions, and sometimes they don't know who to call, or don't know our emails or anything. And at the roundtables, we'll say, listen to the information if you have questions, of course, but we'll be meeting as a PAC, just us as parents, to go over the information, ask questions, and hopefully this will work well. And if it does, we'll just keep doing it.
And Mrs. Russell's being so polite. I think what also professional lends itself. There are no school people there. Mm-hmm. And so it's an open audience that the superintendent's not there, the SPED director's not there, a principal. And so it's a very open, private, protected setting with people who want to give you the assistance, who have the knowledge, have the experience, and to share.
Exactly. So that's an overview of our programming. And I think that will be kind of the core of what certainly the core of what we're doing this year, and it will be the core of what we're going to do next year. In addition, we're very proud of the fact that we've been able to get out a special education guide. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to see that guide, which is essentially a catalog of all the programs that Milton Public Schools offer to special ed kids. I think of it as a roadmap for special education in the town, especially for folks who are transitioning from one school to another, one grade level to another, or who are transitioning into the school system. So you get an overview of everything that's available to you. We're working with Karen, and we want to thank her for her commitment to getting an updated version of the guide out. We hope to have that back from the administration in February, so we can look at it and give our feedback and then get that out. And we'd like to see that document much more widely used throughout the system. And we've talked about how we can do that. So we'll get you copies as soon as we get it done. So some of our progress and accomplishments. include communication. We have we have a great communication with the school system. I think that's, whether it's Mary or John or Karen, we can pick up the phone. Parents can give us issues. We can talk to someone and get back to that parent or incorporate that, whatever that feedback is, into our next meeting. Individual families still struggle with communication, just like in any organization. It's especially complicated when you have a kid with special needs, and it's sometimes difficult enough to deal with any organization. But I think when you're dealing with kids with special needs, you can always work towards better communication. Our progress includes our special education programming, which we just discussed, our special education guide, and our budget advocacy. So we're going to get into the fun stuff now, just in terms of the budget. Again, I know from my perspective, I think that there's always an opportunity to look at things with a fresh set of eyes. There's always an opportunity to look at data and see where you can make adjustments. There are opportunities often opportunities to make organizational change and adjustments. So I don't want you to think, at least I come here saying any cut's bad. Any change is going to be bad. I think we look at it from the perspective of the individual education plans, the needs of the students, and then how are we going to fulfill the needs of those students. So in terms of district-wide concerns we have with the budget, we're very concerned about the reduction in educational assistants, the paraprofessional folks who are so valuable. We're especially concerned district-wide about supervision during lunch, recess, transportation, transitions, the impact on the anti-bullying programs that we have. It is during these times of transition and on the bus and getting on the bus and so forth that kids are bullied. They're more vulnerable because they're unsupervised, and I think that is something we're very concerned about for those reasons, and we'll talk about some other reasons in a minute about the potential impact of those cuts as well.
Children also with special needs have problems transitioning from one thing to another. So even just getting on the bus, I know my daughter takes the bus and she's come home crying a couple of times because no one's talking to her on the bus, or no one's, she had a hard time getting on the bus because she has to pull herself up and pull her backpack up. And there's nothing that can be done at my bus stop, but getting back onto the bus from the school perspective. And just lunch is a tough time for kids. Recess, they're not supervised. I have it written in my plan that she has to be eyeballed at all times, just because I don't want her, there's been things in the past that have, she's had a problem during lunch and recess. So, and that's why the parent professionals the paraprofessionals are so very important district-wide, because I know if my daughter has a hard time, I'm sure the other ones do too. Yeah. And the parents are nervous about this kind of thing. They're nervous about these times. What is my daughter or son sitting with anyone at lunch? Are they? And I know the paraprofessionals will sit down with the kids and say, and have little in the elementary school, they have little lunch groups, just little kind of, why don't you come over and eat with us? And that happened all last year, just kind of because the paraprofessional was sitting in my daughter's 4th grade, and that won't happen if they're not around. So.
In addition, we're concerned about a reduction of SPEDS-related services among the therapists. So if therapists are traveling from building to building. They're not based in buildings. I know that you could sometimes it's on paper it looks like you can spread the services around. I think the services though are very thin now. We've had problems in the past where a therapist is on sick leave, extended sick leave, or there's turnover. And there's difficulty, as there is in any organization, replacing folks, getting those services delivered on a timely basis. The school's been committed to compensatory services when services are missed. However, it's important that those services get delivered on a timely basis.
I think also these services, the PTOT and speech, if you lose one, the small groups get bigger. So instead of putting 1 or 2 people with a speech therapist, you're having 4 or 5 or 3 or 4. So, and sometimes they're only 20 minutes long. So if you put 4 kids with 1 speech therapist for 20 minutes, everyone gets 1 chance then to talk instead of, or if he asks a question, she can give 1 example. So, I mean, that's really, not a lot of time. So the more they're spread out, the more face-to-face time we have, or time with our therapists.
The next area is the preschool. We have concerns about the preschool. There's a coordinator position that is a reduction that is proposed. The preschool exists to meet needs of 3 to 5-year-old kids. Especially important are the kids who are transitioning from early intervention into the school-based setting. It is a terrible time for parents. They're losing the safety net of the early intervention service providers and all the services and the therapists and the support that they've had. In my daughter's case, from 6 months to 3 years old, and then you have to transition into a school system. It is a critical time. Parents are least equipped at that point of time to navigate the ins and outs of getting services for the kids. I really feel, and I think the PAC really feels, that this would be a critical mistake to eliminate this position. And I think that in addition, for regular ed kids who are receiving some services, need to receive some services, if you can catch these issues early, you can address them early, you can get a kid into a little bit of speech therapy, you avoid problems down the road, and that is prevention. I think is the call here.
I'm very concerned about this. I mean, I worked in early intervention. My daughter went through early intervention from 3 months to 3 years. I was one of the social workers that helped parents transition into this preschool. I think, and one of the reasons we have early intervention is to catch these kids, birth to 3, and then 3 to 5. I mean, I think that the parents will be lost, the kids will slip through the cracks. I mean, I think this would be a terrible, terrible cut. I can't say that strongly enough. I think there will be kids who aren't coming from early intervention that will start to try to read in kindergarten, and if they're not caught, they'll go on and it'll affect the whole the whole system. I mean, the more that these kids aren't caught at the beginning or as they go through their years, they will end up on IEPs, which will add more stress to the whole, special needs program in our schools, and there'll be more kids. Instead of the co-taught 16, they'll need 18, or I think just it needs to start at the beginning. I think these kids need to get caught so they can get the services, so they can go on with their regular lives. I mean, unless you have a diagnosis like I think Jerry or our children do, which will need the services all the way through 12th grade. There are other kids who won't get caught, and they might have problems further on down the road, or anywhere from 3 to 5, or even in first grade, and it will be a detriment to I think the whole school system.
Absolutely. The next set of concerns are in the elementary school level. How many of those 6 paraprofessional cuts will come from the elementary school level? I hate to talk about my situation in a setting like this, but my daughter has a one-on-one paraprofessional, Alana Craven. I'll give her a shout out because she's wonderful. She would be in an outside placement if she didn't have a one-on-one aid. She's got a multitude of disabilities, including some mental health issues and so forth. Her one-on-one aid is critical, and to have one one-on-one aid, not kind of split it up among a kind of a hodgepodge of different folks who come in and out of her life. Clearly, she'd be in another setting. It would be a much more expensive setting. It would not be in the least restrictive setting for her, and no one would benefit by a cut in that area.
And there are more than your child, Jerry. I mean, like I said, again, we're talking about our own kids, but she has a set of eyes on her from a paraprofessional through lunch and recess. They're not with her because she would totally abuse that situation if she knew she had someone just for her. But it's in my IEP, and there is someone extra out there watching her play. And if she didn't have that, I would be very concerned with those unsupervised settings for her. And there are more of our stories, obviously, throughout the district.
The next is the reduced resource room at the elementary level. Again, I think it speaks to Vanita's point. You stick more kids in with fewer folks, and it's more crowded, and it dovetails with what we said earlier about parents' concerns about catching and treating and teaching kids early on. So if you have a resource room that's overcrowded, you're not getting to the kids with special needs, but you're not getting to the kids who maybe have less severe needs or need just some preventative services in order to be able to go on in a typically in a developing way.
There are a lot of kids out there that are trying to learn to read. And some kids, even from the French program, they start to have, if they have a problem, they go back into the English, and they'll need the services. So I think that's in the elementary school, I think it's a critical time to have extra, if not less, but even status quo or even extra. Because that's when, if you get the kids early again, like I said before, and this is when kids are learning to read. And then in 3rd grade, they switch from, in 3rd grade or into 4th grade, they switch from learning to read to reading to learn. So if they're behind, then they could become a special needs child because of dyslexia or decoding or whatever. So I think it's a big mistake to take people away from our elementary school just in general.
Okay. In terms of the middle school, we're concerned about a reduction of this special ed teacher. Hopefully we can get a little bit of discussion going on this later, perhaps. But continuation of the language-based program, it does not appear to happen with the elimination of this teacher, and we're concerned about any kind of language-based cutbacks. Again, for the reasons we've stated prior.
I think also, Mary, we might have talked about this at our budget meeting. I think as I understand it, the language-based program is it's stopping in the elementary school. So that person who has a position right now in the elementary school would go over to the middle school and add some support and would make some of those language-based programs at the middle school. She would be able to add some extra support or make them smaller groups or catch
Exactly,
some of
Mrs.
the kids
Russell.
again. So I think it would be a mistake to lose her, just because language base is all, they're all transitioning over to co-taught and or into the middle school, turning into language-based programs at the middle school. So I think that I'm right.
Yes, and Mrs. Russell attended one of the budget presentations, and you did an excellent job communicating, asking the right questions, listening, and interpreting for the rest of the pack or other parents who are interested. We appreciate that.
I talked a lot.
Great questions. Enhance the presentation. And you have one more?
Yeah, finally, we don't want to run on about cuts, but I think in terms of the high school, we've addressed the other levels and now we're at the high school where we're set to lose an alternative education teacher, half of an educational program teacher, and then the reassignment of staff, which would increase classroom size. And so again, we're concerned about the issues that we raised before and related to the high school. That is the end of our formal presentation. Are there any questions, comments, concerns, please.
Ms. Bagley-Jones.
I had a couple. Thank you very much for bringing the information to us. What's the percentage, I don't know if you guys would know this or if you would know the percentage of kids in our substantially separate classroom? Like what percentage of our student body is in our substantially separate classrooms?
Sorry, I don't have it in my head. I would be happy to find it.
I'm just curious about what percentage of the population we're talking about in the substantially separate classrooms. Because then we have the kids who are on IEPs or 504s that aren't in a separate classroom. So
Absolutely.
it'd be curious to see of our population of students, what does that look like?
I can send that to you tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just curious. I think that would be good information for us to have. And I also, there are a couple more points if I can just go with them.
Go.
I always wonder about how parents feel if they know what to ask for. And, it's hard, we're on both sides of the table here, we're in charge of this part, but also from the leadership team, it's clear that they very much care about kids who have any kind of learning issues and want to do the right thing by kids. But, so we're always seeing both sides of the equation. But I'm always curious if you think parents feel like they know what to ask for at the table. And I applaud your Federation for Special Needs and the other workshops you've done, but do you think parents come in and know what to ask for?
No, I think there's a large gap in what, which is part of this preschool issue I talk about as well. Whether they're in this, the parent speak showed that folks who are either entering the system or in the system from elementary, from pre-K to high school, still had significant gaps in knowledge about what their rights were, how to advocate, what the law says, how to interact, and so forth. So I think there's a lot more information that, and we're trying to address this with the special ed guide and so forth, that needs to get out and just gets disseminated.
The reason I was asking about it is that you made a very powerful point about how early intervention ends up costing us a lot less, both social, emotionally, as well as financially.
Yeah.
The earlier kids get service, the better their prognosis is for the rest of their life in terms of their learning needs. And so if parents don't feel like they know what their rights for, and we're missing them because we're just human beings, what happens to those kids? In another district where I work, not Milton, I'll hear of a kid who's 9, who's on the autism spectrum and has not ever been identified or given services. It's 9 years old. If we could have had that kid at age 3, that kid would be looking a lot different. So I'm just wondering, is that a problem for us? Is that something we need to be addressing in terms of making sure kids get in there early enough so that they do better in the long run?
I think parents also have a hard time getting out. It's hard to find babysitters to watch your special needs child, special need child, they feel very isolated. They end up, kind of bunkering down in their homes. Some of them are still going through the mourning of their perfect child, at that very young age. And they, we find parents that said, geez, we didn't even know, or I've never been able to get to a meeting. I think one of the reasons I think we all agree that the 3 to 5 position, I think that's where we could give out the guide and say, look, these are the services, and at least they would have questions. They would know, they would look up their, what's coming up for their kid, or where their kid should be. Oh, look, there are these, there's a co-taught preschool program, maybe my child, and what is that? And then, I think our emails are on there, our telephone numbers are on there, and they could call. I do get parents once in a while that do call me and say, I don't know what to ask for, I don't know where I should be, I'm coming in, and so I think we need to get this guide out. I think that would help immensely. I think there's like 600 and some odd kids on IEPs in the district, and I know that when I was in preschool, we didn't have a guide. In fact, I was told we weren't allowed to have a guide. So we've made a ton of improvement since my child's 11. So so in the last 10 years, we've made a lot of improvement, and hopefully we will be catching some of those people. But if we lose that 3 to 5 preschool person, I'm afraid we're going to be going kind of backwards a little bit.
May I comment on your question? I think that having parents understand and feel comfortable about the whole SPED process, that can be overwhelming, and that, I believe, is the purpose why the state has mandated that every district will have a parent advisory council to fulfill just this role. And what this cluster of folks have done with their model for doing it is really ideal. There's an educational place for us to partner with them, followed by just a total support. Let me tell you, because I've lived it. And I think that's ideal. I did want to respond to your question about having a 9-year-old with autism fall through the cracks. That's not happening in Milton, and that won't happen in Milton. We screen kids when they register for kindergarten to see, is there anybody here who looks like they might need a further evaluation? That's coming up now for our incoming kindergartners. Part of our child find obligation is for our own staff and for external providers to identify to us. So any teacher or any parent or any para can say, I think something's up, someone needs to look at this kid, and then we do. So I do not believe they fall through the cracks here, certainly not with a disability like autism. Some of the more hidden ones, it might take a few years before it shows itself though, right? So I just wanted to respond to that, because I think those are two different questions. Will we find those kids? An autistic kid is never going to slip away from us. It's not happening. But the role of educating and supporting parents through a really sometimes convoluted process is really a partnership, and this piece is so very important. It's really important.
Thank you.
Mr. Walker.
First, thank you for the presentation. That was very informative for me. In the parent speak sessions, are there any common themes in terms of the kinds of things that parents are concerned about?
Communication, always. They come from all different schools and all different problems, and it gets down to communication. And we work hard for getting our message out, working with the administration, and don't you find that that's
I think that's the main issue. It has to do with, I think, information, folks knowing what to ask, knowing what their rights are, being their own best advocate, and then it takes the school administration to really be in tune with what the parents are saying about their kids. They know the kid's the best. They know what their needs are. They need to have partners with and at every level, at every interaction with the system. And you have human beings. And in any organization, that doesn't happen perfectly. But I think we're striving to make that a better scenario for folks. And, you know, we can only do so much. But I think to your earlier point, having parents be informed is the best tool we can have.
May I
Sure.
follow up to Mr. Walker? May I follow up to Mr. Walker's question about the communication? That I was not putting words in Ms. Clasby's mouth, but after she was here a little while, she said, "Oh my, these principals are really involved in special education." And that was probably the best thing that she didn't even know she could have said to me. So, you know, we talk about our English program, our French immersion program, our FLES program, our art program earlier, our special ed program. And if somebody said to me the difference in the special ed program and the improvements, that these principals are vested. And here's a little secret. The principal's in charge of the building. And the principal drives the building, creates the climate in the building. We could just stay here for a week about the principalship. And so when Ms. Clasby said to me, "Oh, these principals, they know every child. They know every child's IEP. They're responsible for meeting that individual educational plan," who the special ed teachers in these buildings are completely integrated. And so special education isn't a different program in each of our schools.
I think the infrastructure there is better than it's ever been. So in other words, we have that dialogue happening. We just need to make sure that it happens, you know, one family at a time, each and every time. So I think we're trending in the right direction, and in partnership with the administration. But we want to make sure, you know, we just want to keep our foot on the gas.
But they
And
have
if
to
I
come
might-
to our, I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to add one more thing, and I won't say another word. But but when you were talking, I said, a woman called me who I taught at the Glover in the second grade. And she was coming in, and she was the person you're talking about. Oh, what am I going to do? What does this all mean? So it's one person making a difference. If it's not the PAC, it's the special ed director or the principal in the building or ourselves. Parents who are guardians who are coming into the system or in the system, they have to access somebody. They have to find an ally. They have to find an advocate to walk them through the process. You know, we're sitting here. It's not, you can't walk yourself through that process. Everybody learns from somebody else. So I would encourage anybody watching to, again, the faces they see here today or somebody in the building in our schools, nobody will say no to anybody. They'll walk them through the process. If they want to call me, I'll put them in touch with the appropriate people that will teach them how to go through the process. So we just picked up on your communication question. I didn't want to interrupt you.
Okay,
You had a
thank
follow-up?
I did. I thought you did a good job of explaining what you see as some of the impacts of the budget recommendations. Here's a tougher question. If you have to prioritize, which of the recommendations are you most concerned about?
Preschool.
Okay, thank you.
And I'd say the preschool and the
what?
paraprofessionals.
Yeah.
In here.
Preschool.
Preschool, and then the paraprofessional.
Thanks, that's helpful. Thank you.
And I guess I would also say, in terms of participating or trying to help identify, the more data sharing that can happen, the better. I mean, we'd be happy to look at other data points and say, you know, we think that this is an area of concern. Maybe it's not as much of an area of concern. I think we come at it from a point of view of trying to look at what's best for the, you know, certainly what's best for the kids, but also make some decisions that are based on data and facts as well.
Other questions? Dr. Jones.
And maybe this is directed to you. And I know that this is pie in the sky, and especially if we don't have the reading teachers which are both in French and English, which really are preventative service for kids who are struggling to learn how to read, correct? Like, we want them to get that extra help. When we designed the French immersion program, we didn't build in any special ed services. So typically what happens, right, correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're in the French immersion program and they find out you have dyslexia or you have another type of learning disability, there isn't really a whole lot of support for you in the French program as far as I understand. Do you know of other programs that try to bring in, and again, we don't have the money to do it, I guess, right now, but thinking long term, how do we build in some more support so that kids don't have to automatically leave the French program if they've got some language-based or some special ed issues that could be serviced within that classroom?
There are some special ed services that are provided for kids in the French immersion program. Things like OT or counseling, but it's very hard to have an accurate assessment of anything language related based on the really interesting and innovative method of teaching in the French immersion program. I know of no other place that has one. I'm fascinated by it myself and learning it. But, you know, there are some things for us to continue to grow with together and learn, and I think this is an amazing program that's for us to look at how could we continue to make it even better, and this is one area that we should explore, and we've talked about it a little bit, but I'm new in just learning it myself. So
would it be a special educator who speaks French? Is that what we would need?
That's something we've talked about. We had some interesting conversations and ideas, but I'm too new to it to jump in and say, here's an idea, though I'm going to have to go in that direction.
You
but
can come back.
we're learning it, and I think there's a lot to think about with that. Yeah.
But I think you hit the nail on the head in terms of, you know, having someone who can speak the language or can evaluate in the language, and I don't see any other way to approach it. You know, it's an individual situation, but that's got to be a tool in the toolbox. So.
Thank you.
Ms. Kelly?
First, I love the logo.
Okay.
Who designed it?
We don't know.
You know, Ms. Downs, do you remember,
It was Emma, and I don't know if I have it. It's Jehano or Jehano, but it's.
thank you.
But
Jehano,
it's
Jehanno, yeah. Emma Jehano.
And we're going to highlight her in the email blast.
Yeah, we should. It
We're gonna
really is
We're
fabulous.
gonna get her a little something.
It really is fabulous.
Yeah, it is.
It's great.
Maybe we should put her
The
in.
other thing, I've been a school committee member now for 9 years, and I just can't tell you the joy in my heart hearing you make the presentation that you have, because it was not too many years ago that the PAC and the administration butted heads constantly, or didn't even talk. And ultimately, when those kinds of things happen, no one wins. Kids definitely don't win. And the fact that you've developed a model that is so supportive of parents who want to avail themselves of your help, I think it just speaks volumes to the administration that's helping you, but you as individuals who are devoting your time and effort to helping others. And ultimately, that's what we're all here for, is to make sure that kids succeed, and you're willing to help parents help their kids succeed. So I commend you for all your efforts, for the very comprehensive presentation that you've made. I appreciate the fact that you've spoken out about your concerns about the budget. You know, I think there was a time that perhaps people would feel reluctant to do that. I'm glad that you have. I share your concerns, I can assure you. And again, just the highest commendation for where you've brought the PAC.
Second.
And may I add something that, and I don't want to be patronizing at all, but the special ed program couldn't have come to where it is without the school committee support. And so the targeting of funds, the decisions that were made around special education, the support of growing the programs, again, you've gone through different administrators, and if the school committee wasn't committed to special education and prioritizing special education, we wouldn't be where we were today. We are today.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you very much. I would
thank
just
you.
echo what a
Thank
great
you.
job
Thank
you've
you
done.
very much.
Thank you.
I'll be brief. We finished and Ms. Kelly will address this in the Finance Subcommittee. I want to thank the school committee, all the parents and guardians and staff who attended our budget presentations. And I think that when you see presentations like this, and Ms. Russell went to the presentation, I say at the beginning of each presentation, don't worry about the size of the crowd, because one person speaks to 10 or 20 parents and the word gets out. So I want to thank everyone. That presentation is on the web, and we encourage anyone to call us with questions. We're posting questions and answers simultaneously. I want to remind everybody, very, very special weekend. We've been telling you about this for 2 months. Pierce players perform Guys and Dolls, January 19th that's tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. The PAC meeting is tomorrow night at Pierce? Pierce at 7. So you could do two events tomorrow night. And Friday night, Guys and Dolls at the Pierce Auditorium at 7 o'clock. Again, we mentioned tomorrow night the PAC meeting. Mr. Phelan, when I'm through, is going to address the very important the meeting of January and February in the Milton Public Schools. One of the highlights, kindergarten information night and first grade information night. I call kindergarten information night next to graduation the second most important night in the Milton Public Schools. I tell the parents this is the beginning of a 13-year relationship. The special education advisory, the roundtable will be on the 9th for the middle school. We'll put those dates out. I don't have to go on. I think that PowerPoint presentation, we saw really superlative presentations. Ms. Kessler and her team deserve a tremendous amount of credit. So under our director, Ms. Bagley-Jones, to my right, that's going to be viewed in every high school classroom. And Mr. Lynch is going to cooperate with us and put it on cable. And we're targeting between 500, are you going to help? 500 and 1,000 students. They've got some very, very clever ideas. This is a must. Circle the date. The invitations are going out March 10th to the MFE celebration, the Big Beach Ball, targeting literacy in our classrooms. The funds go directly back into the classrooms. Circle the 29th and the 30th. I say with dismay, I wish it was one or the other, but 2 nights for the Faculty Talent Show. Again, raising funds for clubs and activities at Milton High. I begged them to have one night, raise the price, but they want to come out Thursday and Friday night for the talent show. And again, on March 31st, we should have targeted this with our PAC presentation. Milton Public Schools are hosting the Massachusetts Best Buddies Prom in our field house. Mr. Phelan will address kindergarten and first grade information night. And I have in your packets, when Ms. Bagley-Jones asked that question tonight, our follow-through is to answer the questions and provide the school committee with pertinent information and invitations that come in during the week. But questions like that the public might be interested in, we'll be sure to target certain questions during my presentation and give that kind of data back to the public. So we'll follow up on any questions that you have. Mr. Phelan?
Sure. 2 important events, as Superintendent Gormley had mentioned. One is the kindergarten night that's coming up for our parents. The calendar of signing up for kindergarten has already started. We have been registering parents online since December. We have over 260 parents of approximately the 300 that will eventually be registered already signed up online. We're communicating with them quite often. We will have our formal presentation done to the audience next Wednesday night, January 25th, here at the high school at 7 p.m. That night will include a welcome to the Milton Public Schools by Superintendent Gormley, an overview of the process that parents will navigate this spring to access kindergarten for the fall of 2012. We will then ask them to register in February, and their assignments will be made in April, and there'll be screenings, as mentioned tonight, and also school-based open houses in May and June. So it's a full spring for our kindergarten parents. It's very exciting to have them come in to the Milton Public School community. Grade 1 nights will be done at the individual schools, so each building principal will communicate with their kindergarten students and parents that in February there will be grade 1 nights at each school. So if I'm a kindergarten parent at the Collycott, I will go to my Collycott school for my grade 1 night, and all the information needed for the choice of program for first grade will be available by the administration and the teachers of each of those schools. And we have been working with the group that has provided you the curriculum online. Those coordinators and department heads and directors meet with me monthly. We met yesterday, and the information that we have available to parents now online, and we'll be preparing to provide them for grade 1, will be extensive. So we're hoping to have well-informed parents and customers for both kindergarten and first grade registration this year.
One more note, Ms. Bagley-Jones might want to pick up. I think that you were at this event. This is on my list. Do you want to tell about it?
Yes, I would love to tell about it. It was the Big Problems Louder Generation, and it was a honors art class, drawing class, event tonight at Mass Art. Cassandra Derby organized her trip, a field trip for her class to Mass Art a week or two ago, and then got them a gallery to display their work. They set up their work over the weekend. I went tonight because my daughter is in it, and there were about 25 kids' displays set up. It was a wonderful event, but it was also not just an art event. It was a community service learning thing. A teacher can bring it as a community service, and this was on social justice issues. So there were things like art about domestic violence, gangs, bullying, homelessness, poverty. One was a table set with all these different plates that were empty to signify people not eating, and they each had to write a description about it, and the environmental issues, and it was very moving. Even if my daughter hadn't been in it, it would have been very moving. But what an experience for these kids to be able to go to Mass Art and have a gallery and display their work. It will be up for another week. I saw Mr. Fitz there, Alan Crone was there, Dr. Burdette was there, and of course Cassandra Derby, who organized the event. There might have been
She
other...
was very insistent that you got your own invitations in your green folder. And so that runs for the viewing public through, today's the 18th, is the opening night, through February 2nd from 6:30 to 8:30 every night at Mass Art. So the school committee, she hand-delivered these. These are in your packet. And one final note to circle in your calendar now, February 11th is February 12th is whose birthday?
My brother Jimmy's.
Isn't it Lincoln?
It's Lincoln's,
birthday?
yes. Yes.
So
It used to be a holiday that some of us remember.
Right. We put in your packets that we're very fortunate here to have the Forbes Museum in Milton. And here's a little secret. One of the Forbes women was an expert on Abraham Lincoln, and in the back of the site is it the actual or facsimile?
It's a reproduction of the Lincoln
Reproduction of the Lincoln Cabin. And so I've put in your packet the invitations, and we'll put it on the web. That whole weekend, you can, for children, for adults, and the Forbes Museum called, they're one of our partners, and they're going to use the PS Auditorium. I don't know what a concert of Civil War music is going to sound like, but they're going to share the profits with us. And so on February 12th, you didn't know this little, did it give you? At 4:30 at the PS School Auditorium, we're going to partner with the Forbes Museum and share the profits that will then go to our fine arts on Civil War concert by Dixon's Gold on that day. So the Forbes Museum, their director works with John Phelan and our curriculum people, and we have an unbelievable partnership with them. And that there are a lot of unbelievable, well, every year we tell you the Lincoln composition winners, and there's a ceremony. So that will end my highlights, but that will be on our web. Thank you very much.
Ms. Kelly.
I just wanted to go back to something that was mentioned at one of the presentation, which was the French curriculum brochures. Could we get those? I'm not sure. Are they?
So they're on the web, actually. So right now, the next wave of curriculum is on the web that we presented earlier, where each discipline has extended the next level of curriculum. So at first we had course descriptions at every grade in every subject. Now we have what every child should know and be able to do at the end of every course is up there right now. There might be a couple of courses still in work, but I think probably 85% we met yesterday. And in conjunction with that, we have incorporated a grade 1 packet through both of those websites, so we can put it together for you, and I can
That's
actually give
okay,
you a
if it's
hard copy.
online, that's fine.
But it might be better for me to put it in paper. Whatever we give out that night, we can give to you in advance for our grade 1 parents next month.
And two final notes. Our annual report, we're going to get it to you to edit so that at our February 1st meeting, you can vote it, but we're going to give it to you tomorrow so that you can take a look at it. And also, my final note, in your packets is the draft calendar for FY 13. If you would take a look at this calendar and by the next meeting, and maybe we vote it at our February 1st meeting. Question?
Ms. Kelly?
Just, I wanted to ask if we possibly could review the week of November 12th. Because to me, that's a very disruptive week, and if there's any way to change, I guess, what would be the parent-teacher conferences to another week, so that it's not so disruptive, I think that might be worth looking at.
We'll look at that. That's around report cards, so we have some ability to look at that. But we'll talk about that if everyone takes a look at that. Sometimes the school committee has questions, and we've adjusted the calendar. Thank you very much.
Okay. I'll try to make my report even briefer. First, I wanted to thank Stephen Pierce, who was here, but has to go to school tomorrow. So to have our student member of the committee here is very helpful. And I wanted to thank the administration for the great presentations at the various PTOs over the last couple of weeks. As you can tell from the responses we've got both from Citizens Speak and from the PAC, people are listening. And as you can also tell from the responses, it wasn't a very pretty sight to talk about what a level dollar budget would be for the schools. Just to recap the one piece, the issue I think that is most pressing on the plate right now is within the next couple of days we'll be starting to see the initial reports from the State House on what the local aid situation might be for this year. That is the biggest unknown in our budget right now. As I've said at several of these meetings, the Prop 2.5 number is known. What our local revenue is going to be is known because it's a small number. The biggest unknown in this whole piece right now is where local aid is going to be this year, and this is the moment over the next couple of weeks when it's best time to call your local legislators and advocate for local aid in this economy, because the fairly dire predictions of the Warren Committee are based on uncertainty really as to where local aid is going to be, and they're taking a very conservative position at the moment, because it's always better from that perspective to add money back than it is to remove money from a budget scenario. So they're hearing some things from the State House that leads them to be conservative about the numbers for state aid. We as citizens need to advocate that that needs to be addressed in this budget round, because cities and towns are having a hard enough time. So to the extent there's money there, we'd like to see some of it come to the cities and towns. So I'll take that opportunity to make my pitch one more time. Ms. Gorman.
So, again, the school committee enhanced the presentation. I think that the parents appreciated the input and having the school committee there. The Glover, the last presentation ran with Mr. Pavlicek's idea, even if he wasn't there. And Mr. Walker, Ms. Kelly, and Mr. Cohane suggested, the Glover asked, what should they do? So they immediately Friday put out all of the addresses. Mr. Walker suggested that I share their email, which I did with the other PTO presidents, who I'm confident will take that format and send it out to all of their parents and encourage parents and guardians to contact our leaders and at the State House.
Two other very small things. First, I managed to make all of them except the Wednesday night, the final one at the Glover, because I was running a conference that night and I had 120 math teachers in learning about the new curriculum frameworks, and I want to thank, we had a presenter who had to bow out due to illness at the last minute. Michelle Cruiser stepped in for our head of math business and did a wonderful job presenting. In fact, I'm bringing her back to do some more, because she did a great job with the high school
She's going to
teachers.
remain working at Milton High School.
Yes, these are sporadic things, but it's.
But that's good,
It
that's
is
the
always good
opportunity for her.
it's always good to get out and discuss these things with your peers. You know, you live in close quarters with your folks here, but it's nice to go out and see what the other districts are doing and share what you're doing well with the other districts and get feedback. So it was
I
a great
mentioned it
event
to
for her.
And she
She
was
did.
professionally flattered by your invitation. And again, she has a young family. She puts in long hours. And she was just like an entering freshman. She couldn't wait to have that opportunity. Thank you.
So I wanted to thank her. We have a school building committee meeting coming up next week, where we hope to try to dot a few more i's and cross a few more t's on that project. I'll give a report on that at our next meeting to see where we are. The only other thing I wanted to bring up, and this is nothing we're going to vote on tonight, we've been essentially offered a gift that I want to pass along to the policy subcommittee before we act on. The issue is this: a local construction company has offered to put on the sides of the high school and the Pierce signage indicating the Charles Winchester Auditorium and the Brian Joyce Auditorium on the side of the high school, as they were named as part of the building project. We don't have a policy about signage on our buildings. We have names on the buildings of the buildings, and the only exception to that is the Copeland Fieldhouse, which, for obvious reasons, is called the Copeland Fieldhouse. But we getting into naming things. You know, the only time we've ever named anything has to do with the Copeland gift for the school building project, where they asked to be able to name certain spaces. This is the Mary Grosso O'Neill Library that we are sitting in. And that was part of the process. But we really don't have a formal policy on the naming or signage on our buildings, and we should. And I would be less than honest if I would say that the fact that one of the persons to be named as a sitting representative worried me somewhat, because there is an issue, in my mind at least, about naming public buildings against current legislators. And I've been in contact with Office of Campaign and Political Finance and the State Ethics Commission over the last couple of days, and I've talked with lawyers in both places. They are not concerned about it to the extent that we follow our policies, which to me says we should look at our policies before we do anything further on this matter. So I'm going to remand this along to the policy subcommittee to look at a policy on the naming of buildings and actually a policy on signage on buildings. What qualifies, where should we be on this? Because it is protection for us all. We don't want to be out there accused of giving unwarranted privileges to a sitting politician, which is the concern that the Ethics Commission has. That's the language of the law, is do you give unwarranted privileges to one of your representatives that someone else would not have. So I'm going to, rather than ask for an acceptance of a gift at this point, the local firm has offered to design it and put it up for us. It was one of the construction companies that built the schools, actually, Suffolk Construction. But I would just like to check this before we do anything on it, just to, going into slightly new territory here. Ms. Kelly, you have a question?
I'm having a little bit trouble envisioning what this would be. So,
for instance, on the side of the high school,
Yep.
You have the Milton High School in the front, but where you have the auditorium round on the side, you might have a sign that says the Charles C. Winchester Auditorium on the outside of the building.
Okay.
May be perfectly reasonable, but as we say, we don't have a policy on what we put on the sides of our buildings. Up until this moment, up until we put the Copeland Fieldhouse sign up, we had never put anything on our building except the name of the building. And so, especially in this case, the attorneys at Ethics and Campaign Finance suggested just as long as you're following your policies, you're good. So I'd like us to look at policies.
So we're not just talking about like a plaque outside that would say.
We're talking like, whatever they are, 8-inch letters, Charles C. Winchester Auditorium up so you'd be visible, those.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'd be interested to see what other districts have in place. I think that would be a good starting point.
So I just wanted to bring that up tonight as something I'd like the policy subcommittee to take a look at.
Can I ask a question about that? The Copeland Foundation sponsored those two, correct? The Mary
Copeland
Grasso-
Foundation
what
has
did-
sponsored, $9 million of enhancements to the school building project. Well, actually, $9 million
And-
towards
right.
$27 million of enhancements to the school building project. And asked as part of that certain facilities be named in honor of people they
Right.
designate.
Right.
That's fine. I mean,
Right.
that's all been passed through ethics and
Right.
campaign finance and everything. That's not an issue because they're an independent organization. They donated money, et cetera, and so forth. This is a subsequent issue about actually putting signage on the outside of the building. That was not part of the original proposal. In fact, it was, when it was offered, I talked to Tony Chiquello, who chairs the school building committee, and neither he nor I nor the superintendent were aware of that. And in fact, to the best of any of our knowledge, it was not ever discussed
I
in the
know,
past.
I know it was not part of the contract or the agreement.
Right.
That's what I was wondering, was it part
That
of the
was not
contract?
part of
Because
the
they
agreement.
got naming rights, but did they get to say
There
where
wasn't
the
any
name-
signage involved with
There
the
wasn't
naming rights,
signage.
other than the plaques we put inside the buildings. Obviously, if you name an auditorium, you have to have some sort of plaque to indicate the auditorium is named that. But this is, just sort of came up as an offer to put the signage on the outside of the building, I think, before we.
Versus we
Just-
owe it.
We don't owe it. This is an offer from, Suffolk Construction, who
Got it.
built this building, did not actually build Pierce, but they have offered to put the signage up, which is, very generous of them and so forth, but I think we just need to be sure we're acting appropriately as we go down this road. Because, you could carry this to all sorts of ridiculous extremes if you really wanted to, Coors Light gives you money for the auditorium, to name the auditorium at Tucker.
Right.
You could take bizarre examples, but I think we really just need some sort of policy that says, this is what we consider appropriate.
Okay. Makes sense.
So, that ends my report, so Finance Subcommittee, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Pavlicek. So following up on the accolades for the presentations over the past several weeks, I truly appreciate the administration's presentations, plus their time, plus all of the parents that came out. I was truly amazed by the numbers of people who came out in the middle of the winter to hear about, unfortunately what is in all instances, horrible news. But also parents willing to do whatever is necessary to try and help. So the letter that came from the Glover PTO was outstanding, I thought. I appreciate the administration sending that along to the other PTOs. The question that I have is, should this be a townwide effort? Because essentially what we're asking for is to increase the portion of the state pie that comes to Milton, not only to benefit the schools, but to benefit the town as a whole. And so, from that perspective, I would ask if the school committee would want to write formal letters signed by the chairman to all of our representatives, as well as the governor, but also to contact the Board of Selectmen, the Council on Aging, any of the other boards that we work with, or, in the town, to say, speak with your constituents and see if you can get them to advocate on Milton's behalf as well. I think it makes all the sense in the world. The timing is short, so if we really want to do this, I think, it needs to happen very quickly, because otherwise we'll lose our window of opportunity to get our voices heard. But to me, it's something worth doing. So I guess I just wanted to hear from the other members and see if.
Do I think we should send a letter? Absolutely.
Okay.
Letters.
Mhm.
I think the selectmen should send a letter, but I suppose that's up to them. But as you correctly point out, the time is very short. They're making these decisions now. So if we're going to act, we need to act right away. Glover PTO has set the standard. They're ahead of us, and we should send something out tomorrow.
I just want to play devil's advocate. What is writing a letter to our legislators going to do? How is that going to get us more money? If there's more money in the state budget, then isn't it just dispersed amongst all the cities and towns?
Right.
Like
so-
if Is Milton going to get more money than Westwood, for example,
Well-
if there is more money
Right.
available?
So at one point in time, there was, what do we call that? Mary Cobb and Mr. Mahoney did the traveling road show to try and talk to other communities who didn't get as much of a percentage of the pie. That was a long time ago. I don't think
That was the League of Women Voters model of state aid that was
Exactly.
being pushed about 10,
So
12 years ago.
those are processes that have happened. In that this is a short window of opportunity, I think what we're advocating for is increased local aid. I think that's the perspective.
Right, in a year where tax receipts are up significantly.
Exactly. So that will increase Milton's dollar amount, hopefully, if that comes to fruition, rather than having conservative outlooks about the budget from a state perspective and saying, oh, no one's yelling about local aid, therefore we're just going to keep whatever our conservative perspective is. So that would be my impetus for writing not only from the school committee's perspective, but hoping to get other boards involved as well.
I think that it's not a question at this point of redefining the local aid process. It's just a question of setting the priority that more money go into local aid this year, and therefore sort of the rising tide bring up aid everywhere, because this is, as we've seen on the Mass Association of School Committees listserv, there's lots of interest in this out there because all the communities are in the same position. I wasn't able to go to the talk yesterday morning at the State House because it's opening day of the semester for us. But Mass Budget and Policy was starting to do their analysis, so that should be up on the web by now, actually. So that'll be one viewpoint. And legislators listen, they get one letter, they know there are 10 more out there. It's always how it works. So it's just advocating priorities at this point, and just saying local aid should be a priority, and I would keep it as simple as that. And I'm more than happy to write something and get it out immediately.
Excellent.
So you'll write a letter on our behalf?
I can write something up
Okay,
and
that'd be
get
great.
it out within the next day.
And then in terms of contacting other boards and departments, is that something you think that we should do, or?
We have the emailing list for department heads for their meeting. I can at least send a copy of mine out, maybe the Glover's out to all of them and suggest that
Yep.
might be an idea.
Right,
Excellent.
that'd be
That would
great.
probably be the fastest way to get it out.
Yep.
Or
That'd be
Kevin
great,
learn,
thank you.
and he could disperse it.
Either way.
So,
Anything else? Yes.
The other issue that I wanted to bring up is special town meeting, which is, I'm sorry, what date, because I don't have
It's
it.
the last Monday, 30th.
The 30th, okay. There is some money allocated towards the rainy day funds or capital stabilization funds or whatever. And granted, it's not hundreds of thousands of dollars, I don't think, but it's something. And
You're
Okay.
talking about what's allocated for, what might be allocated for fiscal 13, or what's in there now?
no, in the special town meeting
Or this article in
warrant,
special town meeting warrant.
Oh, I see.
there is, I guess, the fall funding that came in, the
Yes.
additional
199,000 or whatever it was. Yeah.
whatever it was, is being divvied up. Some of it going to the new consolidated facilities department, but some of it is going to stabilization funds. And I guess it just brings up the question, as the news that we heard at the warrant committee when we presented to them, which certainly was, a different financial outlook than I had been previously, or I had previously thought it was. It makes me think that is this the time to at least raise the questions on town meeting floor before we get to town meeting? Is this the right way to go into not only special town meeting, but also the annual town meeting by putting more money into a stabilization fund when what we have on the chopping block is 26.5 positions? And I don't necessarily think it needs to be decided today, but I think we need to, if there is something to be said, we need to discuss it and create a strategy in terms of how to best advocate for whatever our position is, if we have one.
I think part of the reason behind it was if they do nothing with some of that money, it's got to float to free cash and won't be available this spring. In any case, wouldn't be available till next year. But I think they've been told by the DOR that because it was a revenue that came in after the budget was set, they're actually allowed to expend it now at special town meeting without having it float to free cash. I'm not too familiar with the details of it, but it's something like that. And I think the issue was to do something with it at a special town meeting rather than let it float to free cash and have it sit around longer. But I'm not sure why it couldn't be used at annual town meeting. So I don't know.
I guess that was going to be my follow-up,
Yeah, I'm
is
not
that
sure
you could appropriate it at annual town meeting. And also, if they need a budget to store the money in, I think the schools would be a fine budget to store it in. And we would gladly put it to good use. So I guess I want people to think about it. Do we don't meet before?
We don't meet before.
We don't, okay. We do have some finance subcommittee meetings, though, so perhaps we could pursue that topic a little bit further. And I think that's all I have.
Before we,
That point, I think that that's precisely the right question, and I've been thinking about it as well. But I think that's the right question for what they're proposing to allocate to the stabilization fund for fiscal 13. I think it's a harder discussion for this fiscal year unless we're proposing somehow that they figure out a way to appropriate it for the fiscal 13 budget.
Which I seem to remember has been done in past years where money that's come in, but maybe it takes something special. I guess my point is, whatever the avenues available, I think it's worth talking about. I totally agree with you when you look at what has been discussed in terms of what would go to stabilization funds for FY13. That door should be wide open, and we should have very frank discussions about it. But I guess I'm looking at it as a smaller opportunity.
Let me state my position for the record. If we're laying off teachers, nothing should go to stabilization.
You have no argument here. So.
I think in the short term, I mean, basically the warrant is out. I mean, at this point, I don't think it's an issue of where you would put that money at the special town meeting. The question is if you put the money in the stabilization fund or if you leave it alone and let it float to annual town meeting. I think that's the issue at this point. I don't think, because of the way the warrant articles are written, I don't think you could actually appropriate it anywhere else. Because unless you could put it in consolidated facilities, because I think they're the only people who actually have an appropriation article on the ballot, so on the warrant. So I think the issue is, do you do it now or do you say no and just let it wait? I think that's probably would be the only alternatives for special town meeting.
Right, with a parallel strategy to have a vote at the annual town meeting to take some allocation out of stabilization for the schools budget.
I just wanted to add one note to Ms. Kelly's idea about sending in letters to the State House and Mr. Cohane's question. We have Ada Rose Marin, who's been referred to here tonight, who has walked the Milton Public Schools through securing that full-day kindergarten grant and has been, she's a lobby in at the State House, and she's kept us attuned of the funding. And we were at risk last year. The state was going to target the funding to large cities. And we shared with the Finance Subcommittee that Ms. Rose Marin told us that there's a chance, not next year, but the year after, that would be 13, 14, that full-day kindergarten grant wouldn't be there. And the Finance Subcommittee said that we should start to prepare what, if we had to pay, if Milton parents had to pay full price, what full-day kindergarten would look like. So this full-day kindergarten grant across the state has enabled all of these communities to have full-day kindergarten, remembering that the balance is paid for by tuition. So to see the power of the letters, Ms. Rose Marin wrote a letter for me. I can't take credit, to the Honorable Governor Patrick, that I've included in your packet, reminding him about his outstanding hometown full-day kindergarten program, now that this issue has come up. And every kindergartner decorated a star and across the state, it's called the Rising Star Program. And I wanted to take 6 of them for you, but she wouldn't let me take 6 of the 300 stars that the kindergarten has made. And Governor Patrick will receive a box of 300 decorated stars for his office and a poster showing the children, you have it in your packet, making those stars. And when you went to the PTO meetings, you might have seen over to the side, parents were signing letters. If your child has participated in this full-day K program, we want you to write to the governor and communicate with him how valuable that program is. And we couldn't have done it without those funding and all those hundreds, topping now thousands of children going through it. And so I wrote a letter with her guidance, and we sent the package off to the governor. So when he opens it, he'll get his 320 stars made by the Milton Public School kindergartners and the letters from the parents. So the power of those letters, again, Miss Rose Marin is an advocate, and she has us writing just to keep full-day K so that before and while they're thinking about how to change that funding, they remember how much it matters out in the individual districts. So your suggestion about the letters was very timely.
Anything else, Ms. Kelly?
That would be it. Thank you.
So we will move on to the policy subcommittee. Ms. Sheridan isn't here tonight, so Mr. Walker, you're on.
I can move through this quickly. So as you might recall, we were sent a draft athletic concussion policy, which we need to have actually voted by March. Superintendent sent a letter saying we were reviewing it and we would certainly comply with that schedule. This is unchanged. This is as recommended. The policy subcommittee did not make any changes. We asked Margaret Gibbons and Steve Traster to review it. Mary and I actually met with them. They actually said that our current approach exceeds the requirements in the policy, but they thought the policy was fine. The only change they recommended, and there was a question about whether they could do it, but apparently they could. If you turn to the last page, which is the medical clearance and authorization form, the individuals who can provide this clearance, that list, name of physician or practitioner, physician, nurse practitioner, neuropsychologist, that included athletic trainer. They thought that was not appropriate, so apparently they were able to delete that, although this is a DPH form. So we would recommend that we move forward with this and approve it. This is the first reading, so hopefully at our next meeting, second meeting, we'll be able to approve this, but it's as recommended by DPH and Mass Association of School Committees.
All right. Any comments on this? We don't vote a first reading as a rule. We voted at the second reading and adopted at that point. Very good. Well, if there are any between now and our second reading, which will presumably be our next meeting, please inform Mr. Walker, and Ms. Sheridan.
And then the rest of these have either no edits or very minimal edits, and I'll move through those quickly. So school district legal status, no edits. This was as it is presently constituted, and we're recommending simply to update it and approve it again. But there's no changes to the policy as written. People in their school district, there was one change in the first bullet. Second sentence, this said the public will be kept informed of the progress and problems of the school system. We decided progress and challenges was better than progress and problems. Next is non-discrimination. In the third bullet, that said to work toward a more integrated society. We thought better to focus on the things we can control, so we said to work toward a more integrated school community. Otherwise, that's unchanged. Non-discrimination on the basis of gender is completely unchanged. Sexual harassment, the only significant change there is in the third paragraph. While this policy, which applies to all employees and students of the Milton Public Schools, We added "and individuals with whom we do business" because we have an obligation to make sure that our sexual harassment policy includes vendors. Otherwise, no significant changes there. Complaint procedure is unedited, and drug-free schools is unedited.
The purpose of this is, as you might have gathered, is to take a periodic walk through our policy manual and make sure it is up to date. Ms. Kelly,
Which is exactly what my question was. I had no idea that we were undertaking such an endeavor, number one.
I found that out after I got on the policy subcommittee.
Okay, but number two, in our previous go-around with this, and I found it very helpful, we would get the marked up version so that
Yeah.
you could see what the changes were, because this comparison is very difficult. So, and I think we've talked about that, utilizing that methodology previously. So if we are undertaking the revisions of all our policies, I would hope that we could sort of use that technique. But also, I guess I'd be interested to find out what the timetable is for all of this, because there's a lot on our plate that we have yet to get to, I think, and I just wonder, you know, can we put together a little project plan or something as to how we were about to get through this?
Yeah.
And, you know, previously we've used consultants. I think we used NESDEC previously. MASC does the same thing. I guess what I'm wondering is, how big of a project is this, and is it worth engaging in some manner those professionals that have assisted other districts in doing this type of thing?
Well, the project plan is as soon as Linda Lee and I can get through it. Whether we might need assistance, it does not appear so, but I think I'd make that judgment as we go. Thus far, the policies are we're not making significant edits to the policies, and the ones that are actually new policies, like both the concussion policy and the social networking policy, are ones where we're receiving either drafts from Mass Association of School Committees or Mass Association of School Superintendents, and then working from those.
And so I guess the reason I raise it is the last time we did it, we consulted with NESDEC. If you go out to MASC and look at what their template of policies are, in many instances, not many, in a lot of instances, they have more policies than we have. So the process that happened last year was a consolidation compared to other, you know, templates. So if the purpose of this is to review our present policies just to make sure that they meet our needs in terms of wording, which is what you've presented in this batch, then that's fine. That's a more limited scope than really saying.
That was my understanding.
Okay. So again, this is the first I'm hearing of this process. I guess perhaps at another meeting, I would appreciate sort of understanding what's the scope, what's the timeline that we would like to get through it. And I understand, you know, you have limited time and meetings, et cetera, to get through this, but to the best you can, you know, how would you meter this out, just so that we can have something before us that makes sense, if that's okay.
so to the matter at hand, we have recommendations on these policies to either approve them as amended or just to affirm the ones that are unedited. We could either do this by a series of votes, or I would suggest it's possible we could, if there are no objections to it, we could do it in one vote to, you know, take these, or we could, I don't mind doing 7 if we're gonna do 7, but I'm just thinking of time. Ms. Kelly? Oh,
So you're saying at a
sorry,
future
they're
meeting?
none yeah, sorry.
These are
none of
all
these
first readings,
First
right?
readings. So again, if you have questions on these,
Right, and again, when we did this previously, they did come to us in batches, and if there was questions on one or more, those were
pull
brought
them.
out of the batch. The batch was voted that didn't have any questions on it, and then individually we went through the ones that did have questions on it, just so.
Good. So,
consent
what's the
agenda,
process for determining if there are questions?
people will ask.
Right, so
I mean,
typically
basically
what
what-
would happen is you would present for a second reading, the policies. You would ask if anyone has concerns that they touch base with you before the meeting, so that you know that one will be brought out, and that's how you would present it to the committee.
Yeah, generally what happens with the consent agenda is we'll go through them, and at some point I'll just say, are there any that need to be pulled from this? And if no one says, we'll pull those ones out, vote the rest, and then handle those individually. So we don't
Great.
do 300 votes,
Okay.
just do as many as we need. So we don't need any action on that tonight. Yes?
I just have a question relating back to the
Sure.
policy subcommittee. You mentioned the sexual harassment, the vendors, our Corey policy, does that include vendors? And it should be updated if it doesn't?
Vendors,
Vendors that come into the
oh,
building.
there
If they come into the building,
that
anyone
come
who
into
comes into the building.
But they're
Yes.
not employed by the school department.
oh, they still have to be Cory, yeah.
Okay, just check since it's an issue these days,
All right.
places, so it would be good to know.
Even parent volunteers on a regular basis.
Right,
Right.
everybody.
Absolutely.
Good point.
Yes, Ms. Callis?
Just one other thing on the policy subcommittee. I think that many months back, I think the present class size policy that's out on the web is not reflective of what our last vote was. So I guess, and I think I had asked for that to be put on the list and revisited just so it gets updated. So before we start going into sections of policies, I would hope that any priority policies that need to be reviewed would get done first.
And,
Yes.
and so I would tell you that years ago, the public was told that there would be a book in each office if they wanted to go and look at it. That didn't work when updated policies. And so Sean Walsh in our office is glad that these are being looked at in this way, because now they'll all be up on the web and we can communicate. If anyone wants to see our policies, they'll be up on the web and they'll be reviewed. And so to your point about class size, on behalf of, if I can speak for Sean Walsh, he's glad we're gonna go through them and make sure that the school committee feels good about them, make sure that all of these, they're very conscious about all of these dates, and I guess every 2 years?
Yeah.
2 years, you're supposed to go back and look at it, so, I know. And so, all of these dates below, if nothing else, we get our house in order about this. So you bringing up the class size, that's something that Sean Walsh wanted, and we have to communicate to the public, I'll do it in the email blast, that don't go to the offices and look in the books, because that's a management fiasco, getting the updated policies out and having them change them. It's confusing enough for me, working with these, let alone sending the principals and secretaries.
So in terms of electronically keeping these, previously, we would have section A would all be one running PDF. I would request that it become separate PDFs
Good point.
so that if it needs to be updated, it can easily be done rather than changing the whole thing.
And I think that also answers your question about the process. If we have to do this every 2 years, the process is the policy subcommittee will be constantly reviewing policies, because by the time they finish reviewing all of our policies, it'll be 2 years in time to start again.
Right, and I guess I
So-
would, do we have a policy that says that we have to review it every 2 years? Where are we getting that? We do?
That might
Interesting.
be the first policy we should look at.
Exactly.
Okay, old business, any citizen speak topic responses? We actually, I think, responded to some of the citizen speak from tonight, actually, in the course of our meeting. Next, meeting agenda items. Anything? Yes, Ms. Keller.
What date is the retreat? I'm sorry, I didn't write it down.
Yeah, what
Wanna
are
say
the
it's the-
upcoming
Is it
dates?
Is it the
11th?
8th?
8th?
Yes, 8th is a Wednesday,
So our
So it's
next
about
meetings are,
1st and the 15th.
The retreat's
but
the middle.
February 8th
Middle,
and
the
February
retreat's the middle
15th.
one.
And if we target
30th, right?
next meeting agendas, Mr. Phelan's time committee, we had said the first of the year, and they've gotten very involved in this, so we'll target February 15th.
Fine.
And I should talk about health and wellness at some point, since we are having a meeting this week.
Okay, so we'll put that on the next agenda as well. We'll put school building on there too, since We will have a meeting between now and then.
On the 25th.
Anything else? In that case, I'll entertain a motion to enter executive session for the purpose of discussing contract negotiations with AFSCME Council 93. We will adjourn from executive session, not to return to open session. Moved by Mr. Walker, seconded by Mr. Cohen. This requires a roll call vote. Mr. Walker?
Yes.
Mr. Cohen?
Yes.
Myself, yes. Ms. Kelly? Ms.
Yes.
Bagley Jones? Sorry, I went wrong order. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kate.